Welcome back, Formula One 2014. That is essentially what it felt like watching that first ever qualifying session of the 2026 F1 season. We had Mercedes slapping everyone up. We had a four-time world champion in a Red Bull out early and not making it all the way to Q3. An essence of 2014 and some familiarity with, discrepancies of big gaps, a lot of talk about the new regulations and a lot of concern about the new regulations. Yeah, it's very much like rewinding time. So for those of you who have maybe been with me on the channel since 2014, we're hopping back on to just chat about the session we just watched because I feel like, it's been the biggest regulation change since 2014, 2022, it's just the chassis side. This was both chassis, aero, engine. So I felt like let's throw it back. Let's just get on camera here and talk about the session we just watched because it was interesting. It was interesting. Obviously, the big headline thing early on in qualifying was Max Verstappen crashing out in Q1 before even sector one, let alone a full lap time. Wasn't his fault. It was a simple, well, maybe not so simple, rear brake axle lock. You saw the different camera angles, especially the one from the rear looks hilarious. It's just a kind of a comical situation where he's put on the brakes, turned in, and the rear axle's locked. You can do it very, very easily on the F1 game. You've probably seen me do it plenty of times on the F1 game, but this definitely probably would have been, linked to the harvesting, and I suspect maybe there was some discrepancy of maybe the brake was still, the recovery system was still harvesting energy as Max really went down the gears, and Anthony Davidson on the Skypad analysing it, showing that basically as he went down a further gear, that's when it really went in reverse and spun him round and crashed out. So Max will be starting, I think, not last place, not P22, because I think, according to Sky, on their grid results, it'll be Sainz in 21st place and Lance Stroll 22. I'm not too sure how accurate that is, but nonetheless, Max Verstappen will be starting this new era of regulations, which he already has said he's not enjoying and is no fun. His word was fantastic. As he climbed out the car, he'll be starting on the back foot and will have to recover. Whether he can, I don't know. No one knows how the race is going to pan out with all the battery levels, etc. There's a lot of chatter about, is it going to be honestly unsafe maybe if drivers are at such different deployment levels? Because speaking of deployment, clearly that was a massive factor in this qualifying. It's going to take so long to get used to the super clipping, which, if you're unfamiliar and you were confused about it in quali, it's essentially the engine, the PU, needs to recover energy. It's depleted so much in Sector 1 and into Sector 2 here in Australia that at the end of the main straight into the fast chicane, what is usually a flat-out, very quick left-right, the engine effectively is clipping its own speed because it's trying to recover energy back, because the teams have worked out it's more efficient to clip it and recover it then so that they have some battery left at the end of the lap. It all sounds a bit unlike Formula One, honestly. And the deployment levels between drivers, team to team, into team was clearly an issue because we heard Lando Norris was having deployment issues for most of the session. Then Piastri had some deployment issues, so it meant McLaren basically tripped over the line in Q3 to get 5-6. But no such issues for Mercedes in terms of how they were looking compared to everyone else. George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, a front row lockout. I mean, this is no surprise to anyone who was watching F1 back in 2014. I think clearly there was a lot of discourse in the build-up in preseason testing. Oh, Ferrari, Red Bull, maybe, and the entire time, even when like Toto Wolff was blabbing on about Red Bull having some insane battery, I entertained it on stream even, but in the back of my mind, I knew he's just talking waffle. We all know, the real wheel knowledge people know how good Mercedes HPP are at making new V6 engines. They are made for this stuff, okay? And you could just see it coming, or at least I did, and I'm sure some of you did as well if you were watching F1 for a long time. And I think newer fans were maybe hoping that McLaren would still be up there, Ferrari would be good, Red Bull would be there with a brand new Red Bull powertrain, but in the end of it, it all comes back to Mercedes being so good when it's a regulation change that involves engine, chassis, and aero all combined. They're so good because, yeah, it's not just the engine, it's the car as well, because McLaren do have the same Mercedes engine, but the caveat is they only just got the latest spec Merc engine for this race weekend. In testing, Merc had the latest version, and all the customer teams had a safer version for reliability, which is kind of, their prerogative to do. And so they turn up to Australia, maybe not having the same efficiency and understanding of how the actual Merc engine is going to fully run, except the works team. And that's the advantage you have of being a works team like that. But clearly the car as well, aero and chassis wise, is great because, McLaren, yes, they had some deployment issues, but it is the same engine, obviously a little bit lack of efficiency, but there's that difference. So the Merc chassis and aero in tandem with the engine is working great. Russell looked at ease out there, really looked at ease, kind of, just very chilled laps. There was no real, hustling or harrying needed for George Russell, and it was a very calm P1. The same couldn't be said for Kimi Antonelli. Rough day for Kimi, but I got to say, props. Amazing that he crashed in FP3, and the pressure to deliver that one lap in Q1 after Max crashed, the red flag effectively gave Merc time to get Kimi out there. Very, very impressive that he can deliver under pressure to get into Q2 and then go on about his way. And obviously there was a few foibles here and there, a foot in the pit lane for one of his mechanics. Then they left the radiators or the cooling thing, and so that might be a financial penalty, but Kimi unfazed and just got through and did what he had to do in second place. I'm sure there's still time to find for him versus George Russell. I'm going to be very interested to see how that goes. I really back Kimi to learn quickly, and I think this will motivate him, seeing that, okay, I'm now in a race-winning car. Russell's ahead of me, though, my more senior teammate. I think that's going to motivate Kimi to almost accelerate his improvement. I hope. At the same time, Russell's spoken about taking this, maybe, this is his chance, and, being motivated by seeing Lando winning a championship last season. So Russell's definitely going to be licking his lips maybe at the opportunity. Isaac Hadjar, third place. Obviously the only Red Bull left in the session, but cool, calm, collected. I mean, he said it was pretty chill as well. That was pretty much how he described the session, and impressive. I mean, I hope this is obviously we don't know where Max would have been, but Hadjar beat the rest of them apart from Merc, so I hope that's good signs that, with this big reset of aero, chassis and engine, that Hadjar could be for the first time a second Red Bull driver that can actually do semi-okay and, not look like totally out of his depth compared to Max Verstappen when obviously he's actually running. Let's go back down to the bottom end in Q1. Obviously not a great day for Aston and Honda. I mean, it could have been almost an okay day because they nearly got into Q2. I was this close to tweeting out Fernando Alonso Q2. I've seen enough. World champion by the end of the season with the development rate. But Colapinto ruined it for them. But I mean, 17th place there to get ahead of Cadillac. I'm considering how awful pre-season was, the talk about the vibrations, the nerve damage, 4 seconds off. To be ahead of the two Cadillacs is actually probably not that bad for Aston, Honda, and Fernando Alonso after all of that. Cadillac obviously nowhere, but you expected that. They have a long way to go. Completely brand new team to the sport. It's like my team season 1. This is literally... I know other teams say it's a 5-year project, Alpine, Aston. Cadillac really is like a 5 to 10-year project of actually looking somewhat okay, or even fighting for out of Q1 and looking somewhat on pace. So you got to give them time. Sainz, completely under the radar, very quiet day, engine issues all day basically, so nothing really to say there. It was a pretty depressing day, I guess, for him and Williams as a whole, because Albon mistake in Q2, I think it was, across the grass at turn 1, and P15, not much to shout home about. Gasly and Colapinto in the Alpine, 14-16. Are we sure Alpine have been given the Merc engine? Because, yeah, I mean... There's nowhere to hide now. They need to do a lot of work on the chassis and aero side, clearly, because we know it's not the engine's problem, because the engine's great. So Alpine, a lot of work to do there. Haas, little bit underwhelming for Haas. You know, a lot of people were touting them as the best of the midfield, and in the end, it actually ended up being Racing Bulls and Audi fighting for that. So Haas, yeah, I mean, hopefully there's a bit more to come. Maybe in race pace terms, they were, Behrman was pretty chirpy about the Ferrari in terms of race, maybe for the deployment and stuff earlier in the weekend. So let's see how that goes. For Audi, I'm very impressed by Audi. They're a brand new brand to Formula One, not team, because they're still, the essence of Sauber is there and Audi have taken it over, but a brand new brand to Formula One to be in Q3 is very impressive with their own brand spanking new Audi engine, and an engine manufacturer we've never seen in Formula One. Really impressive. Unfortunately, just tripped over at the end with Bortoletto's mishap in the pit lane. The engine stopped. So, I mean, it's still really, really impressive to be in P10. And I'm really glad because I was worried about Audi. I thought, is there a worry they're just going to be nowhere with their own new engine? Because it's a big task. But to be fair, obviously, a big reason why we have these new engine regulations is because of like Audi coming in, so maybe it shouldn't be a surprise basically, but really, really cool to see them. Racing Bulls, 8th and 9th for Lawson and Lindblad. I'm really impressed by Arvid Lindblad. Awesome rookie debut. He's the only rookie on the grid, and it's a strong P9. He's looked strong all weekend. That is actually really great in this pressure cooker of the new regulations to be P9. Really, really awesome. And I'm really looking forward to seeing how his career and his first season progresses. Ferrari, we haven't spoke about them. Let's speak about them. Unfortunately, just not there. Lewis, 7th place. Leclerc, 4th. I just read Leclerc was saying we expected Merc to be 5 tenths quicker, not 8 tenths quicker. So Ferrari were taken aback a little bit, and I think everyone didn't expect Merc to be this good, the works team, and they fully turned up the engine. But why? I'm just questioning, why wouldn't they? It's in life, history has a knack of repeating itself, and that's the same for sports a lot, especially in a sport like Formula One, where engineering prowess almost carries over through generations and through teams. And in this situation, it's still a V6. It's a lot more electrical. I just don't know why other teams maybe are that surprised, because it just seemed that to be going that way. But yeah, Ferrari, I mean, a little bit lackluster. Again, it could have been deployment stuff. For Leclerc, it was definitely, I think, at one point, we got the very, very famous, we are checking in the middle of that qualifying for the deployment, I think it was. So maybe still some gremlins to iron out in that kind of respect. So when it comes to the race, no one has any clue. That we don't know. Qualifying, I felt like, okay, I really felt like Merc were going to be very, very good. For the race, who knows? I think Merc will be great, but reliability could come into it, because I think I saw Russell is actually already on his second of 2 batteries. You're only allowed 2 for this season, and Merc opted to swap over to the second one already for some reason, whether it's reliability or mileage or what, I don't know. So maybe even Merc aren't susceptible to reliability issues. And Martin Brundle, very surprisingly, made I think his revelation of he reckons like there'll be like 8 retirements out of this race just because of reliability, or just the PU winds down, or what, or Aston retire obviously. So it's a big unknown. But that quali was a very familiar feeling to 2014. Very, very familiar feeling to 2014. The clipping is not great. The clipping's not great. I think this regulation, the chassis and aero, is fantastic. If we had the chassis and aero as they are now and last year's engines, I think it would be an amazing formula. The engine clearly is the deciding factor of how this formula is going to be taken. And so far, it's not looking amazing. I still think there'll be plenty of enjoyment to be had, because a lot of this discourse happened in 2014. We were all very worried about 2014, and eventually that formula turned into a decent one. We got a really great 2016 of Rosberg v Hamilton. So I think there's potential still, for sure. And as the teams progress, there's going to be a massive learning curve, massive performance curve, not only on aero and chassis, but even the engine, like the way they harvest or the way they choose to deploy and harvest. I think they're going to learn, and they're going to get better at managing that clipping. by the end of the season into next year and whatnot. So I think there's still a chance for there to be some fun. I think there's still going to be I hope, some decent racing. I know a lot of negative people are just thinking it's going to be absolutely trash. So we shall see. We shall see. But the reality is, even with that wishful thinking, it's very clear. Even for me, I wanted to give it a good chance. I didn't really speak negatively about the regulations this entire winter. But now it's kind of like, okay, you can really see it is really detracting from the onboard spectacle, at least. And I just feel like they did so well with the chassis and aero, and this PU's let it down. So it is what it is. We are going to be stuck with it for a while. It's going to be a case of, can the FI tweak things with the rules? Can the teams get better? And then long term, I think a lot of F1 fans are hoping that we could return to a naturally aspirated engine with like a biofuel, with a sustainable fuel, and just kind of have a naturally aspirated one. We don't need the battery, but the problem is the entire car world still wants a hybrid thing. They may not be going full EV with like Ford rolling back their EV production and stuff like that, but they're definitely still wanting to use a bit of battery in the road cars, and therefore they'll probably still use them in Formula One going forwards, because it has to be road relevant to attract the brands they want. And it's like the only reason Audi came in, for example. That's the general feeling, I think, then, off the back of that qualifying session. Very curious to see what Verstappen can do in the race tomorrow, because we didn't see anything from him, and I still think he will absolutely wring the neck off. As he said in an interview, you could drive a shopping trolley and he'll try and get the best out of that shopping trolley. So, it's going to be curious to see what Verstappen can do in the race. And I think in the midfield, and then there'll be the top 4 teams in midfield within those groups. How does that long-term deployment race happen? How does it actually ravel out? Plus, also, you got to remember, there's also going to be tyre wear as well. We've not really spoken about tyre wear or tyres at all in the weekend. Like, actually, come and think of it, I've not even heard Sky or anyone talk about tyre wear. So that could be a factor as well. Just like, also, they have to also do their stints on the tyres and protect the tyres maybe as well. And especially with these newer engines, with the amount of power that comes out the rear wheels, will rear tyre wear be a big factor in a place like Australia? So it's a big unknown. And there's some worries about people like, being so much quicker like that. I hope not. Hopefully there's not a crash or anything like that. If there is, that will really spark up a debate of, changing some things. I've read, things about changing the amount that the cars deploy so that there's not that big regen needed. But then that's going to make the cars even slower, right? It's going to be even crazier to watch then, in terms of, at least they might be on full throttle, but in terms of the actual raw speed, surely it'd be less then if there's less deployment across the board. So yeah, it's an era of chaos in the same vein as 2014. But in the end, what I think is going to happen is that George Russell is going to do nothing and is going to win the race. But let me know what you guys make of all of that in qualifying. And I will be back in a similar fashion tomorrow for a reaction to the race, just because, like I said at the start, being such a big regulation change, I really felt the need just to come on for an old school sit down and chat about the first race. And if you guys like it enough, maybe we can continue it for future races. I don't know. But I definitely wanted to do it for this first race weekend, because it is a big unknown. And there were some big shocks of, Verstappen out early, Russell slapping everyone up. And the big word of the day, I guess, is deployment. That's the big word of the day. But guys, hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll catch you guys around. Goodbye.